Charlie Juliet 4-5, southwest, straight to possibly 2 bare deltas. I've just ordered off missions 2-1 and 2-2 from Coningsby, and your missions interrogate.
Sector 916.
Others are approaching from the southwest.
Targets at 065, 30.
Yep.
Okay, well I control aircraft only involved in what we call air defence environment. So those are aircraft which are there to protect the integrity of British airspace.
As well, and now radar recovery is 4,300 pounds total on the ground.
Okay, cheers. Radar recovery is 4,300 pounds TOG. Target slightly left, range 40. Target crossing you right to left on a 150.
And then associated with that occlusion of the low over Iceland, we've got a belt of bad weather, rain moving in the afternoon to the west of the Outer Hebrides.
So if we drop in at Machrihanish and work the Western Isles about lunchtime, will we be able to get a Jervy slot?
All right, what sort of recovery state is that going to give us back here?
Okay, with the risk of showers in your period, we're going to ask you to come back with what is your IFR fuel.
Charlie Whiskey Radio 84, you're loud and clear, Marham using runway 24, circus wind 220 at 11 knots, colour slate blue, the QFE 1026, fully sensible.
Approach, this is mission 1294.
Mission 1294, Marham approach, loud and clear. When an aircraft has an emergency, something like that, and the weather's very bad and the air traffic's working very hard, you know, the adrenaline can really flow and everybody's working hard together. And sometimes it really can be quite testing. What we want to do is look out and see the aircraft landing safely.
Mission 1294, estimating 20 miles east of you at 3,000 feet to transit through your east to west.
Roger, you've identified 20 miles east of Marham, checking pressure 1016, continue VFR and advise.
And we'll let down with Scottish into the sound. We can use Machrihanish radar if there's any cloud at low level.
Good.
Okay,
Super.
And to update the height of the water. We then run north of the sound. Okay, continue north. As well as looking at the pure navigation, monitoring the system, I'm responsible for electronic warfare. Also the targeting, the finding of the target. And we'll aim to coast in a Lochgilphead head.
Yeah, sure. We can do some sort of target on the low ground up there, yeah.
If you find one on the flat, that would be nice, yeah.
Okay.
To run a beam Jura around the end of the Mullican tyre, and then we'll coast back into Galloway at Girvan.
See if I find another target down there as well.
Sure.
I hadn't done any sort of flying before I came into the Air Force, but it was something I felt that I'd like to do. It's amazing. I mean, it lives up to every expectation.
Yeah, fine. We'll come down the railway line, find a target, and that gives us then a chance for another height fix over the water, plan fix off the mast, into Jervy, and then we'll do the full range detail, and we'll chicken out on fuel.
Yeah, we'll come back high level.
Expect to see if we've got to change some TMR or change any LIUs.
I'm a trained air systems officer, so I'd say about 10% of my time is engineering as such. A lot of it is allocating resources, looking at priorities, and it's really a question of management of resources.
Yeah, well, we should have one. We'll have one spare aircraft for that slot.
Yeah. No.
On 609, the T3, the only problem we've got is a tight turnaround time on the first two slots, but we should make that.
Well, they may give us an extension on those, so I think the range slots should be fairly flexible. Just have a look at the flying program.
Well, I'll think about that about 12:30 and see what.
This one, which involves a bonding fob to the left-hand outboard flap. I'll show you that one when we get out there.
Yeah, good. No rush. Super.
52.
Okay. Yep. Right.
there's a new type of bonding foam. It's only slightly different from the old type, but at least you'll know what it looks like on future walk rounds.
Yeah, fine.
Okay? See you now.
Mission 2-1, you said loud and clear.
Hello, Mission 2-1 and 2-2, both on channel.
This morning, they said, well, no, if you want us to from pitch black, I suppose I could have it changed.
That traffic's now to the northwest of you, 8 miles southbound. I'll keep you advised.
Well, at that time, I'd been working as a labourer for about 2 years, and I had this degree, and people were screaming at me saying, you've got to do something a little bit more serious and use your qualification. So I started to hunt around, and the 2 jobs I came up with, one was to join the Royal Navy, and the other, I looked at the Air Force. What I was looking for really was a job which would give me a little bit of a varied life with perhaps a chance to travel as well. Tied to that, an element of responsibility and perhaps a little bit of man management.
Well, my father was in the Air Force and my grandfather, and I suppose I'd heard them both talking about the Air Force from being quite young, you know, and I can't remember when I first decided that I wanted to join. I think I went to an air show and thought, oh, this looks quite interesting, and I'd heard all the RAF stories, so I suppose you begin to build up a picture. And it sounded like an interesting sort of life, and I went, you know, looked into it from there through careers information and visiting RAF stations and sort of thing.
I was actually going to be a teacher trainer, and it was shortly after I'd seen this and decided that I'd got it and got accepted that I was just looking through the Sunday Times and had an inclination to fly always, but had not really followed it up because the people I'd spoken to said. You need to be reasonably intelligent, well, not reasonably intelligent, but you had to have a sort of incredible qualifications and things.
You actually need basic of 5 O-levels, but they do obviously prefer you to have a few more. The more qualifications you've got, the better. I didn't want to go to university, but that's not essential.
I joined the Air Cadets when I was 13. I was with the Air Cadets for 6 years. I visited quite a lot of RAF stations. And I decided that that was what I wanted to do. I took an interest in aviation, aircraft, and really had tunnel vision on the Air Force. Although I was looking for other things to do, I really decided at a fairly early age that that's the way I wanted to go.
So I went to my careers teacher who told me how much it was going to cost me to become an airline pilot. And it was ready cash, which the family didn't have. And so I was a little put off, and she suggested the Air Force. Now, this is something I'd never, ever considered at all, in any way at all, because I sat there and I thought immediately of marching in files and wearing boots and hats and saluting and that sort of thing. But she encouraged me to go and find out a little bit more about it, which I did. I read the glossy pamphlets, of course, which made it sound very attractive, and decided it was probably worth a go because I didn't want to lose contact with aeroplanes, and I was willing to put up with anything.
Cramwell was, for a lot of people, uncomfortable, I think, because it required you to be under physical pressure as well as mental pressure. So some people found it easier than others. I guess really it's all about leadership and developing your confidence so you can get the best out of them and lead them through any mission. So you're given basically practical things to achieve there. Just developing that ability of yours and trying to bring out some form of leadership from you. Tied to that, there's also the academic side.
Ironed but not pressed was the block. Ironed but not.
You arrive on I think it was a Sunday afternoon, and you're shown to your rooms, and it's quite a rude awakening because you think it's all kind of Air Force girls in that block and men in that block, but you're all mixed in together right from the very beginning, which sort of gives you some sort of indication that the Air Force isn't like the other forces in that they do mix you up for all your training. And you go and get all your kit in the first few days and meet flight commanders and things like that.
What's the name? Jerry was good as
And then you go on to a fairly rigorous sort of physical program right from the beginning. You have physical training sessions just in the gym and out running and all sorts of different sports. And you're also having lots of lectures on the academic side of it. You've got to learn about Air Force law, and you've got to learn about man management, officers' responsibilities, customs, etiquette and social requirements, one of their favourite ones, which is sort of which knife and fork to use and this sort of thing. About uniforms, behaviour, all sorts of things like that. I enjoyed the IOT, I suppose, on the whole, because you make a lot of friends, you meet a lot of nice people, and it's very interesting. What I didn't like was the massive emphasis on the physical side. Perhaps I'm, in my mind, exaggerating the emphasis that was put on it because I know it's my weaker point.
And the idea of the team wasn't for the men to suddenly surge forward because they were physically stronger than the girl, but for everybody to react together and to draw on everyone's weaknesses and strengths and to better work as a team. And I think that's the whole factor of Cranwell.
Although you're actually a nobody in that in the sense that it doesn't matter whether you're a pilot, going for navigator, going for fighter controller or whatever, you are still a person who has got to achieve standards with another group of people. And that's what's that really is what Cranwell is about, making you work with other people and achieve one aim at the end. Whether it be build a plank out of, and get across a stream with 3 matchsticks or whatever. You're still fighting to get from there to there with everybody else.
So understanding their weaknesses or their strong points.
Yeah, it's difficult to see that at the time, though. I mean, it all looks like a bit of a stupid exercise, all these mates in Fred Scuttle hats carrying pine poles through the block and working long hours, getting very little sleep and just generally being messed about. You don't see the value of that until you get the mature reflection bit at this sort of stage, and you wondered why they were getting you up at 5 o'clock in the morning or why you were standing in a slick trench at 2 in the morning in the snow. But it's not until now that you look back on it and you can relate it to your own experience.
The whole essence is not can you achieve the objective, but how do you approach it? Are you autocratic? Are you democratic as a leader? Can you derive the best from other people? Can you use their knowledge and present it in the right format as a leader? If he's a good leader, their suggestions, plus a few of his own, and come out with a good end result. So they're monitoring you. How do you react under pressure? How do you react towards other people? Are you a confident leader? Are you a nervous leader? And all the time you're being appraised and analysed and criticised, both by yourself and the team.
When you get up to the top, we'll secure you up there. Okay? Yeah. Hey! Whoa!
I don't think anybody goes through completely plain sailing. People might enjoy it more than others, but everybody has their weak areas, and you do need to encourage one another. And you have tremendous sort of team spirit and fellowship throughout IoT that I don't suppose you'll ever get again, because everyone is under strain and you all know you've got to help each other through.
Right, first thing you do is, if you've never flown before, which I have, it's very amusing. I mean, you get guys with weathercocking on the runway and all sorts, so it's monkey see, monkey do, basically. And they let you have a little play, but nothing desperately exciting. You move on to one of the basic training stations, and the jet propellers. Again, you start off with monkey see, monkey do, and then you progress to your first solo at about, I think it's about 10 or 12 hours, depending on how you get on. And that's literally just taking off, doing one circuit and landing. Because he doesn't necessarily tell you before the trip that you're going to go solo. So you'll land and he'll say, well, how do you feel about going solo? And you go, yeah, I guess. And he'll jump out and they'll sort the seat out and you'll taxi around and, you know, you've just been doing it, so you just call for takeoff and you get airball. And then, oh, you're all right, you're airborne, so now you got to do is land, so you just turn downwind and land. In fact, I had to overshoot because I cocked up my first approach. And that's it, you've just been solo. It was amazing to feel that I'd actually taken off and landed on my own, and that was it. Throughout the training, you can come down and feel absolutely dreadful and know you've really cocked it up, and you just feel in the depths of despair and you want to jack the whole thing in. The next day, you go and do it again, and it all works, and you're back on cloud nine. I mean, the range of your feelings is amazing. At about 100 or 120 hours, they say, right, well, is this guy going to go choppers, multi-engines, or fast jet? And if you're going to go fast jet, you move on to Valley. It's your course for your wings, basically. And that's on a Hawk, which is a completely different aeroplane and absolutely smashing. It's a lovely aeroplane. It goes fast, a lot faster than you've been going. It handles beautifully. It's just a good fun aeroplane to fly, and it's like driving a nice sports car as opposed to a saloon or something like that.
How do you reckon that we could have got in a little bit quicker?
By using the technique of leading the number 2 and the leader.
You've got to get your position back on him, so you're basing everything on the number 2, as your number 3 down here.
Right. Going for the bird to strike and surge, and
you actually have simulator staff, guys sitting on a console, sitting there all nice and happy with a cup of coffee and thinking, what can I give to this guy? And they'll give you an emergency or two, which they want you to sort through to the end.
And immediate remark. Good. What's your attitude?
But again, it's the idea to max you out, if that's the right expression. That's the expression we use anyway. Nobody likes simulators, but it's a necessary evil. You do learn a lot from obviously simulating emergencies, which is your engine literally actually going out. I mean, it's happened to me on Tornado, and the left engine blew up.
242 walking right.
Here are all 3 in more.
Sarge, 312 walking right.
That's all been fixed. Fine, so we should be all right there. Good. Let's walk out there and play. Cheers, Sarge. See you later.
Valley, again, it is very pure flying. Like, you know, you have to learn how to control it, stall it, spin it. Again, it's more just pure flying and of being able to do a steep turn exactly right. It's still training you how to actually fly the aeroplane. So to get your wings, you obviously have to do low level and that sort of thing. Navigation as well. Navigation plays a big part when you're going through training. And then at the end of that, you actually get your wings. And, I mean, that's great. I mean, that's super.
It's a much more straightforward process for the navigator. He goes to Finningley for a standard 14-month stay. Start off with 6 months of ground training, sitting in the classroom, learning all the basics about weather and proper navigation, in inverted commas, how to use a chart, plotting positions on charts, and general planning considerations for navigation at its most basic form.
Yeah, if you line those up, you get more. It's never more than we could do.
Come left, steer 190 for Finningley. 190, Yep, just gone through.
There's a lot of simulator work as well there, when you're simulating the airborne side in the Domini, and working there with external radio aids, as you would in the Hercules. So it's the 6 months in the classroom, the basics, some simulator work, and then you move on to flying, and the flying is all at high level, around about 37,000 feet. You're primarily interested in interpreting the land from the radar, and now you're looking at it from a different way because at lower levels you've now got hills in the way. You've got to be able to interpret between a ridge line, a single hill, and what's shadow behind the hill, which is a technique which we still carry on into the Tornado for monitoring low-level flying in the dark. And at this stage, they'll start to put in extra problems. They'll give aircraft emergencies, such as fires and engine failures, during which time you must help the pilot, advise him on how he should handle the emergency and on where his nearest diversion airfield is to get the aircraft on the ground quickly, if that's necessary. You leave Finningley, graduate, and present it with your brevet. And now for the fast jet side, you move on to a more realistic aeroplane. We're looking at the 420 knots case now, which is getting up to the minimum sort of speed you'll fly for real. So at each stage, the world is going past the window a little bit faster.
The engineering training starts after initial officer training. In the first instance, it consists of basically being orientated to the RAF engineering way of doing things.
There we go. Up.
There's a lot of backup engineering to get an aircraft into the air. It's not just the day-to-day engineering and rectification of snags and defects. And there's the flight line engineering, which is the day-to-day maintenance, refueling, checking the tyres, checking the oil levels, for example. And then there's the more long-term preventative maintenance. Once you've got a good idea of the engineering management aspects of the job, you then get a technical education which really consolidates the engineering degree courses from the past and really orientates you to working on aircraft. So a lot of it is mathematics, electronics, aerodynamics, thermodynamics. Once everybody's got to that level, they then go and do an aerosystems course. Most jobs really are very much a 9 to 5 job, and you don't really get that much responsibility until you've been in the job for a number of years. But in the Air Force, you get a lot of responsibility very early on. I mean, I'm 6 months out of training, and I've got an awful lot of responsibility.
Ian's in charge of umpty-ump blokes. Yep. I'm in charge of an aeroplane. You're in charge of controlling somebody's aeroplane, as you are, Tracy. And I think perhaps at a younger age, I mean, I was, well, I don't know, 20, 21 or so, when I actually was allowed to take an aeroplane off or whatever and go and do my own thing. And, you know, you've taught people down, which is in bad weather, which is a very responsible job, because it's, you know, you're talking about somebody's life as they come down.
As a 19-year-old.
Yeah, and I do feel that you do get a lot more responsibility than perhaps you would straight away in the outside world.
I suppose one of the main disadvantages with the jobs is the uncertainty of where you're going to be in 2 years' time. There's no way of knowing, so it's very difficult to make a decision on where to buy a house, for example.
I think one of the big considerations is whether to send your kids to boarding school. For the obvious reason, if you're moving around, you don't want your kids to change school all the time. Some people are totally averse to boarding school and wouldn't send their kids there, and the kids will move around with them. Other people will send their kids to boarding school. I think you've got to think about it.
It's quite nice to have a ready-made social life there for you, which you can take advantage of. However, I think it's very important to have your own life away from the Air Force. It gives you another perspective on life, a chance to meet other people, just to broaden your own horizons. So I make a conscious effort, I think, to live away from the Air Force, so I can cater for myself at a personal level, entertain people at my place, and just feel generally, when I'm off duty, that I am off duty.
And it's not just that, it's a life generally, because every couple of years you're moving somewhere completely different. So even if your job was fairly routine at one place, you're going to be, well, moving on in less than a couple of years in most cases.
Yes.
So it's always going to be changing.
It used to be that to be aircrew was something special. And so you were the ones who were allowed to walk around in a flying suit, which set you aside from everybody else. That you had you were allowed a certain amount of swagger, a certain amount of bravado, if you like. Now it's all becoming, I hate to use the word professional, because that's a very good thing, to be professional. But we're all coming to the same level now. where the administrators, the air traffickers, the engineers, the aircrew are all treated very much the same.
It's really a 24 hours a day job, 7 days a week. You never stop being in the Air Force. And I enjoy it because it's really what I always wanted to do. I come into my own really, not so much facing the problems of the morning when you need the aircraft, but it's really starting a day or so ahead. And it takes an awful lot of sort of foresight to see if there are going to be problems, and I have to look at the flying program and see what's required and then manage the resources so that you can actually do your job. And my job is really to ensure that you've got the resources or you've got the kit to go out and do it.
My angle on the whole thing is that job satisfaction is something which comes in many forms, and we all derive it from different sources. One of the ones that strikes me is that you're so much closer to your results. In that JJ and our standard role is to take an aeroplane and go and fly a full profile sortie. So we'll sit in the planning room, get together with a map, a lot of pens, and we'll draw a line on the map, picking out the terrain to follow, all the sort of things that we would do for real, avoiding certain areas and deliberately going close to others. And we'll rush off at anywhere between 450 and 500 miles an hour. And for an hour and a half, we'll fly down that inky line on the map. We'll pretend to deliver some weapons against a bridge in the middle of Scotland. And eventually we'll end up in a range somewhere where we'll actually drop a practice weapon. And it comes off the aeroplane, and hopefully, if we've got it all right between the two of us, it's actually going to hit the raft and go and splash into the water. And that is it, that's the result now.
That hour and a half in the air, you can have an absolutely fantastic time, and it wipes the slate clean of all the silly little jobs that you're going to get, which you get in any job. I mean, there's nothing like being at low level and the world rushing past you. I mean, or turning it on its ear and just pulling it around a corner and watching the world go past you. It's great, I mean, it really is.
It's difficult to say what makes a fighter controller, but all you need to be able to do really is to think fairly quickly and accurately and make very quick decisions, and then transmit that information obviously to your pilots.
You get a great sense of satisfaction, I think, at the end of the day, because you can see aircraft that you've got down onto the ground, which maybe in bad weather it's nice to have helped them out and given them a service that they really value. Also, if they've got an emergency and you have to get things set up on the ground for them, have to get the crash crew standing by. I think because everybody does tend to have to work together.
Uniform November, Golf Sierra Charlie, you may see traffic right 2 o'clock range, 5 miles, heading south. They've got sighted.
Let's forward them in order for the procedure 200 feet, which is decision right to land.